Newfound Love. Chapter 1. The Stirring. Emily Harper stood on her front porch, sipping a steaming cup of coffee as the early morning sun bathed Willow Creek in a soft golden glow. The small town, nestled in the rolling hills, was waking up, and Emily cherished these quiet moments before the day began. She had lived here her entire life, and the town's rhythms were as familiar to her as her own heartbeat. Her husband, David, was already at work at the local hardware store where he had been employed for the past 25 years. Their children, Jake and Sophie, were still asleep, enjoying the last few days of summer vacation before school started. Jake, a senior in high school, was a talented soccer player with dreams of going to college on a sports scholarship. Sophie, a sophomore, was more artistic, spending hours painting and drawing in her room. Emily loved her family dearly, but lately she had felt a growing restlessness, a sense that something was missing. Her life had become a series of routines: cooking meals, cleaning the house, volunteering at the local community center, and attending the endless stream of town events. She had once dreamed of becoming a writer, but those aspirations had been shelved long ago in favor of raising a family and supporting David's career. Today was the day of the Willow Creek Fall Festival, one of the town's most anticipated events. Emily had been in charge of the bake sale for as long as she could remember, and her apple pies were legendary. As she finished her coffee and headed inside to gather her baking supplies, she wondered if this year would be any different. By mid-morning, the town square was bustling with activity. Stalls lined the streets, offering everything from handmade crafts to fresh produce. Children ran around with painted faces, and the scent of popcorn and caramel apples filled the air. Emily set up her booth, arranging the pies and cakes with practiced precision. "Emily, these pies look amazing as always," called out Sarah, her best friend and fellow festival organizer. "Thanks, Sarah," Emily replied with a smile. "I hope they sell well. We need to raise a lot of money for the community center this year." As the day went on, Emily found herself immersed in the familiar routine of greeting customers, making change, and chatting with friends. But just as she was starting to feel the monotony set in, a voice broke through her thoughts. "Hi, I'm Alex Bennett. I've heard a lot about your apple pie and thought I'd come see what all the fuss is about." Emily looked up to see a tall, handsome man with tousled brown hair and a warm, easy smile. His eyes sparkled with genuine interest, and for a moment, Emily felt a flutter of excitement that she hadn't experienced in years. "Well, I hope it lives up to your expectations," she replied, handing him a slice. "Welcome to Willow Creek. Are you new here?" "Yes, just moved here last week," Alex said, taking a bite of the pie. "I'm the new English teacher at the high school." Emily's interest piqued. "An English teacher? That's wonderful. My son, Jake, is a senior there. I'm sure he'll have you for at least one class." Alex nodded. "I look forward to meeting him. This pie is incredible, by the way. You have a real talent." Emily blushed at the compliment, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the late summer sun. They continued to chat, finding common ground in their love of literature and the challenges of small-town life. Emily was struck by Alex's enthusiasm and the way he spoke about his students and his travels. He had lived in several different countries, teaching and exploring new cultures, something Emily had always dreamed of but never had the opportunity to do. As the festival wound down and the sun began to set, Emily felt a sense of renewal. Meeting Alex had stirred something inside her, a reminder of the dreams and passions she had set aside. She watched him walk away, blending into the crowd, and wondered what the future might hold. That evening, as Emily returned home and slipped into her routine of making dinner and tidying up, her thoughts kept drifting back to Alex. She found herself smiling at the memory of their conversation, the way his eyes had lit up when he talked about his favorite books. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt a spark of excitement, a sense that maybe, just maybe, there was more to life than she had allowed herself to believe. As she lay in bed that night, listening to the steady breathing of her sleeping husband, Emily felt a stirring deep within her. It was a small, almost imperceptible shift, but it was there. And as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't help but wonder where this newfound sense of possibility might lead her. Chapter 2. The Spark. The days following the fall festival were filled with a renewed sense of anticipation for Emily. She went about her usual routines with an extra bounce in her step, her thoughts frequently drifting to Alex Bennett. The memory of their conversation and the connection she had felt lingered in her mind, making her smile at the most unexpected moments. It wasn't long before their paths crossed again. Emily was at the Willow Creek bookstore, her favorite place to escape the mundanity of everyday life. She loved losing herself in the aisles of books, finding solace in the stories and characters that filled the shelves. As she browsed the new arrivals section, she heard a familiar voice. "Looking for something specific?" Alex's voice was warm and inviting. Emily turned to see him standing there, holding a thick novel in his hands. She couldn't help but smile. "Just browsing. I love getting lost in books." "Me too," Alex replied, setting the novel down. "It's one of the reasons I became a teacher. Sharing that love with students is incredible." They spent the next hour discussing their favorite books and authors, laughing over shared opinions, and surprising each other with recommendations. Emily felt a deep connection, as if she had known Alex for much longer than just a few brief encounters. There was an ease to their conversation, a natural flow that made her feel both excited and comfortable. "Have you ever read The Secret Life of Bees?" Emily asked, pulling a copy off the shelf. Alex shook his head. "No, but I've heard good things. Should I add it to my list?" "Definitely," Emily said, handing him the book. "It's one of my favorites. The way the author captures the complexities of life and relationships is just beautiful." As Alex took the book from her, their fingers brushed, sending a jolt of electricity through Emily. She saw a flicker of something in Alex's eyes, a momentary connection that hinted at deeper feelings. She quickly pulled her hand away, blushing slightly. "Thanks for the recommendation," Alex said, his voice soft. "I'll be sure to read it." Over the next few weeks, Emily and Alex's friendship grew. They often ran into each other at the bookstore or the local cafe, where they would sit for hours discussing everything from literature to travel to their dreams and aspirations. Emily found herself looking forward to these encounters, feeling a thrill of excitement each time she saw him. One crisp October afternoon, they decided to go for a hike in the hills surrounding Willow Creek. The leaves were turning vibrant shades of red, orange, and yellow, and the air was filled with the earthy scent of autumn. As they walked, their conversation flowed effortlessly, touching on deeper, more personal topics. "I've always loved teaching," Alex said, stepping over a fallen branch. "But sometimes I wonder if there's more out there for me. More places to see, more experiences to have." Emily nodded, understanding that feeling all too well. "I used to dream of being a writer," she admitted. "But life got in the way. Raising a family, supporting David. My dreams just slipped through the cracks." Alex stopped and turned to face her, his eyes filled with genuine interest. "It's never too late, you know. To pursue your dreams, I mean." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. "Maybe," she said softly, feeling a glimmer of hope. As they reached a scenic overlook, they paused to take in the breathtaking view. The town of Willow Creek lay nestled in the valley below, a picturesque scene that looked like something out of a storybook. Alex took a deep breath, savoring the moment. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said. Emily nodded, but her gaze wasn't on the town. She was looking at Alex, feeling a rush of emotion she hadn't felt in years. There was something about him that drew her in, made her feel alive and seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand. Alex looked at her in surprise, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently, a silent acknowledgement of the connection they shared. In that moment, standing on the hilltop with the world spread out before them, Emily felt a spark of something new and exciting. It was as if the barriers she had built around her heart were slowly crumbling, allowing her to feel again, to hope again. As they walked back down the trail hand in hand, Emily knew that her life was changing. The spark between them was undeniable, and while she didn't know where it would lead, she was ready to follow it, wherever it might take her. Chapter 3. The Conflict. Emily lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling as the clock ticked past midnight. The house was quiet, save for the rhythmic snoring of David beside her. She turned her head to look at him, her heart heavy with guilt. For the past few weeks, her mind had been consumed with thoughts of Alex. She felt alive and invigorated whenever she was with him, but the joy was accompanied by an ever-growing sense of dread. The reality of her situation was sinking in. She was a married woman with 2 children, and her feelings for Alex were complicating everything. The next morning, Emily went through the motions of her daily routine, her mind a tumult of conflicting emotions. As she made breakfast, Jake and Sophie bickered over the last of the cereal, and David grumbled about a long day ahead at the hardware store. Emily forced a smile, but her heart wasn't in it. She felt like an outsider in her own home, her mind and heart pulled in a different direction. That afternoon, Emily found herself at the cafe, where she and Alex often met. She stared into her cup of coffee, trying to make sense of her emotions. When Alex walked in, her heart leapt, but she quickly reminded herself of the complexity of their situation. "Hey, Emily," Alex greeted, sitting down across from her. "You look troubled. Everything okay?" Emily sighed, meeting his concerned gaze. "It's just complicated. I have a family, Alex, a husband and children who depend on me. And yet, here I am, spending time with you, feeling things I shouldn't be feeling." Alex reached across the table and took her hand. "I understand, Emily. I don't want to make things harder for you. But I can't deny what I feel for you. You're an incredible woman, and I think there's something real between us." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "I feel it too, Alex, but I don't know what to do. I'm torn between my loyalty to my family and this connection we have." That evening, when Emily returned home, the tension in the house was palpable. David was in the living room, his face set in a deep frown. He looked up as she entered, his eyes narrowing. "Where have you been?" he demanded. Emily's heart raced. "I was at the cafe," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "Again? You've been spending a lot of time there lately," David said, his tone accusatory. "Is there something you need to tell me?" Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "I'm just trying to find some time for myself, David. Is that so wrong?" David's eyes softened, but his frustration was still evident. "It's not wrong, Emily. But I feel like you're pulling away from us. From me. What's going on?" The words hung in the air, and Emily felt the weight of her secret pressing down on her. She wanted to tell David the truth, but she knew it would shatter their family. Instead, she opted for a half-truth. "I've been feeling restless, David. I need something more. I just don't know what that is yet." David's shoulders slumped, and he ran a hand through his hair. "I get that, Emily, but we're supposed to be a team. You can talk to me, you know." Emily nodded, tears threatening to spill over. "I know. I'm sorry, David. I'll try to do better." In the weeks that followed, the tension between Emily and David only grew. They argued over small things, forgotten chores, missed family dinners, and Emily's increasing absences. The love that had once bound them seemed to be fraying at the edges, and Emily felt herself drifting further away. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, Emily fled to her favorite spot by the lake, seeking solace in the quiet beauty of the water. She sat on a bench, tears streaming down her face, when she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw Alex approaching, concern etched on his face. "Emily, are you okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. Emily shook her head, her voice choked with emotion. "No, Alex. I'm not okay. I'm falling apart. I don't know how to balance my feelings for you with my responsibilities to my family." Alex put his arm around her, offering comfort. "I wish I had an easy answer for you, Emily, but I don't. All I know is that you deserve to be happy. You deserve to follow your heart." Emily leaned into him, finding a momentary peace in his embrace. But as much as she longed to stay in that moment, she knew she couldn't run from her responsibilities forever. She had to make a choice, and it was tearing her apart. As the sun set over the lake, casting a golden glow over the water, Emily made a silent promise to herself. She would confront her feelings head-on, no matter how painful. She owed it to herself, to David, and to her children to find a resolution, even if it meant making the hardest decision of her life. Chapter 4. The Affair. Emily sat on her porch, the soft glow of twilight casting long shadows across her yard. She held her phone in her hand, rereading Alex's text message for what must have been the 100th time. "Meet me at the old barn tomorrow at 5 p.m. I need to see you." Her heart raced at the thought. She knew what meeting Alex would mean, what lines it would cross, but the pull of his presence, the connection she felt, was too strong to ignore. She found herself longing for the excitement and the feelings he stirred within her. The next day, Emily told David she had a meeting at the community center and left the house with a mix of excitement and guilt churning in her stomach. She drove to the outskirts of town, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as she approached the old barn that stood hidden by trees and tall grass. Alex was already there, leaning against the weathered wooden structure. When he saw her car pull up, his face lit up with a smile that sent a warm rush through Emily. She got out of the car, her heart pounding in her chest as she walked towards him. "Hey," Alex said softly, his eyes locking onto hers. "Hey," Emily replied, her voice trembling slightly. They stood there for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words and unacknowledged feelings. Then, as if drawn together by an invisible force, Alex stepped forward and gently cupped Emily's face in his hands. She closed her eyes as his lips met hers, the kiss igniting a fire within her that she hadn't felt in years. From that moment, their relationship transformed. What had been a deep friendship and emotional connection now blossomed into a full-fledged affair. They met whenever they could, finding secluded spots around Willow Creek where they could be alone. The thrill of their secret meetings, the stolen kisses, and the whispered conversations filled Emily with a sense of adventure and passion that her life had been missing. One afternoon, they met at a hidden clearing in the woods. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground as they spread a blanket and lay down beside each other. Emily felt a rush of happiness as Alex traced patterns on her skin with his fingers, their laughter mingling with the sounds of nature around them. "I wish we could stay here forever," Emily whispered, resting her head on Alex's chest. "Me too," Alex replied, kissing the top of her head, "but I cherish every moment we have together no matter how fleeting." Their love grew stronger with each meeting, but so did the complexity of their situation. Emily was acutely aware of the life she was living with David and the kids, and the guilt gnawed at her. Yet she couldn't bring herself to end her affair with Alex. He made her feel alive, cherished, and desired in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, as they sat in Alex's small apartment, Emily looked around at the cozy space filled with books and art. It was a stark contrast to the home she shared with David, where everything was functional and organized. "Do you ever think about what it would be like if we could be together openly?" Alex asked, breaking the silence. Emily sighed, the reality of their situation crashing down on her. "All the time. but I don't know how to make that happen without hurting everyone I care about. Alex took her hand, his expression serious. I don't want to pressure you, Emily. I just want you to be happy. Whatever that means, I'll support you. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she leaned in to kiss him. I know, Alex, thank you. As the weeks turned into months, their affair continued, the secretive nature of their relationship adding to the intensity of their feelings. They found joy in the smallest of moments, a shared glance, a brief touch, a stolen kiss. But the weight of their secret became heavier with each passing day. One particularly cold winter afternoon, they met at the lake where they had shared their first heartfelt conversation. The lake was frozen over, and the bare trees stood stark against the gray sky. They walked along the shoreline, their breath visible in the crisp air. Emily, I've been thinking, Alex began, his voice hesitant. This isn't sustainable. I hate sneaking around and hiding how I feel about you. Emily stopped walking and turned to face him, her heart aching at the pain in his voice. I know, Alex, but I don't know what to do. My family, they need me. And I need you too, Alex said, his eyes pleading. But I don't want to be the reason you lose them. This is tearing you apart, and I can't stand seeing you like this. Emily felt tears sting her eyes as she looked at Alex, the man who had reignited her spirit and made her believe in love again. She knew he was right. The affair, as thrilling and passionate as it was, couldn't go on forever without causing irreparable damage to everyone involved. I need time to figure things out, she said softly. I need to think about what's best for everyone, including myself. Alex nodded, his expression resigned but understanding. Take all the time you need, Emily. I'll be here waiting for you. As they parted ways that day, Emily felt a heavy burden on her heart. She loved Alex deeply, but she also loved her family. She was standing at a crossroads, and the path she chose would determine the course of her future. The thrill of new love had awakened something inside her, but the consequences of her actions were becoming impossible to ignore. She knew she had to make a choice, one that would bring both clarity and heartbreak. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, her mind racing as she gazed out the window at the sun setting over the quiet suburban neighborhood. The decision she had been grappling with for months now weighed heavily on her heart. Her husband, Michael, and their 2 children, Lily and Max, were downstairs, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in her mind. Emily had always been the anchor of the family, the one who held everything together. But now, she felt like she was drowning, suffocating under the weight of her own expectations and the demands of everyone around her. The spark that once ignited her passion for life had faded, leaving her feeling empty and disconnected. She had tried to talk to Michael about her feelings, but each conversation ended the same way, with him dismissing her concerns, too wrapped up in his work and daily routines to notice the depth of her despair. Emily felt trapped in a life that no longer felt like her own, and the guilt of even considering leaving her family tore her apart. But today, something inside her shifted. She realized that staying would mean continuing to lose herself, and she couldn't bear the thought of waking up one day, decades down the line, filled with regret. She needed to reclaim her sense of self, to find out who she was beyond the roles of wife and mother. With a deep breath, Emily made her decision. She stood up, her resolve hardening. She would leave, not because she didn't love her family, but because she needed to love herself too. It was the hardest decision she had ever made, but she knew it was the right one. As she walked downstairs, the sound of Lily and Max playing in the living room reached her ears. Michael was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Emily's heart ached at the thought of the pain her decision would cause, but she knew she couldn't back down now. "Michael, can we talk?" she said, her voice trembling slightly. He looked up, surprised by the seriousness in her tone. "Sure, what's up?" Emily took a deep breath, her eyes welling up with tears. "I can't do this anymore. I need to leave. I need to find myself again." The room fell silent. Michael's face turned pale, and the children stopped playing, sensing the tension. "What do you mean, Emily? You can't just leave. We're a family. I know this is hard to understand, but I feel like I'm losing myself. I need time to figure out who I am and what I want from life. Staying here, pretending everything is okay, is only making it worse." The emotional fallout was immediate. Michael was devastated, his confusion quickly turning to anger. "How can you be so selfish? What about Lily and Max? What about us?" Tears streamed down Emily's face as she tried to explain. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I love you all so much, but I can't keep living a lie. I need to do this for me." Lily and Max clung to Emily, their young minds struggling to comprehend what was happening. "Mommy, don't go," Lily cried, her small voice breaking Emily's heart into pieces. "I'll still be here for you," Emily promised, her voice shaking. "I just need some time to figure things out." The days that followed were a blur of emotions. Emily moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, close enough to still be involved in her children's lives, but far enough to have the space she needed. The community was abuzz with gossip, some people expressing sympathy while others judged her harshly. Michael struggled to cope with the sudden change. He juggled work and parenting, the weight of his new responsibilities overwhelming him. He resented Emily for leaving, but deep down, he also realized how much he had taken her for granted. Lily and Max were confused and hurt, their once stable world now filled with uncertainty. Emily visited them regularly, but the visits were bittersweet, filled with both love and longing. As the weeks turned into months, Emily slowly began to rediscover herself. She started painting again, a passion she had abandoned years ago, and found solace in the strokes of her brush. She joined a support group for women going through similar experiences and found strength in their shared stories. The journey was far from easy, but Emily knew she had made the right choice. She was healing, piece by piece, and in doing so, she hoped to become a better mother and a stronger person. Her decision had shaken her family to its core, but it had also forced them all to confront their own truths and begin the long, painful process of healing. In time, Emily hoped they would all emerge stronger, bound not just by duty, but by a deeper, more honest love. Chapter 6, The New Life. Emily woke up in her new apartment, the early morning light filtering through the curtains. It had been a few months since she had made the heart-wrenching decision to leave her family, and while the initial days had been fraught with guilt and loneliness, she was starting to feel a sense of hope and renewal. One of the most significant changes in her new life was Alex. They had met at a local art class, where Emily had gone to rekindle her passion for painting. Alex, an art teacher with a warm smile and an infectious enthusiasm for creativity, had been a source of inspiration and support. Their friendship had slowly blossomed into something deeper, bringing both challenges and joys. Adjusting to life with Alex was both exhilarating and daunting. Emily cherished the new experiences and the fresh perspective Alex brought into her life. They spent weekends exploring art galleries, hiking in nearby nature reserves, and discovering new restaurants. Alex encouraged Emily to take risks in her art, pushing her to experiment with different styles and mediums. However, starting over was not without its difficulties. Emily struggled with feelings of guilt, especially during moments of happiness. She often wondered if she deserved to feel joy when her decision had caused so much pain for her family. These thoughts were particularly strong during her visits with Lily and Max, who were slowly adjusting but still felt the sting of her absence. One evening, as Emily and Alex sat on the balcony of her apartment sipping wine and watching the city lights twinkle, Emily voiced her concerns. "I feel like I'm betraying my children by being happy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex reached out, gently taking her hand. "You deserve to be happy, Emily. Your happiness doesn't negate your love for your children. In fact, being true to yourself sets an example for them. It shows them the importance of self-care and authenticity. Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. She knew Alex was right, but the guilt was a constant companion. Balancing her new life with her responsibilities and love for her children was a delicate dance, one that required patience and understanding. The challenges extended beyond her personal feelings. Emily faced criticism from some members of the community who viewed her decision as selfish. She had to navigate strained relationships and rebuild her social network, finding solace in the friends who supported her unconditionally. Despite these obstacles, there were many moments of joy that affirmed Emily's choice. She found fulfillment in her art, holding her first solo exhibition, which was a resounding success. The sense of accomplishment and validation was overwhelming, reinforcing her belief in the path she had chosen. Her relationship with Alex also flourished. They learned to communicate openly, sharing their fears, dreams, and insecurities. Alex's unwavering support and understanding helped Emily heal the wounds of her past, allowing her to open her heart fully to the possibilities of the future. One memorable day, they decided to take a spontaneous trip to the countryside. Driving with the windows down, the wind in their hair, and the open road ahead, Emily felt a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. They spent the day exploring quaint villages, laughing and talking about everything and nothing. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, they found a quiet spot by a lake. Sitting on a blanket, they watched the reflection of the sky dance on the water's surface. Emily leaned against Alex, feeling a profound sense of peace. "I never thought I could feel this happy again," she admitted softly. Alex kissed her forehead. "You've come a long way, Emily. You're stronger than you know." The journey of starting over was far from easy, but Emily was learning to embrace both the challenges and the joys. She was building a new life, one where she could be true to herself while still loving and caring for her children. It was a life filled with art, love, and the promise of new beginnings, and for the first time in a long while, Emily felt hopeful about the future. Chapter 7: The Disillusionment. The first few months with Alex had felt like a dream. Emily was swept up in the excitement of her new life, the thrill of a fresh start, and the joy of rediscovering herself. But as time went on, the cracks began to show. The reality of blending two lives, each with its own history and baggage, started to surface. Emily noticed the first signs of trouble during a quiet dinner at home. Alex had been distant all evening, responding to her questions with monosyllabic answers and avoiding eye contact. The warmth that once filled their interaction seemed to have faded, replaced by an uneasy tension. "Is everything okay?" Emily finally asked, breaking the silence. Alex sighed, setting down their fork. "I've just been stressed with work, it's nothing." But it didn't feel like nothing. Over the next few weeks, the distance between them grew. Alex's enthusiasm for their shared activities waned, and they began to argue over small, seemingly insignificant things. Emily felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach every time she sensed Alex's frustration. The first major conflict erupted one rainy Saturday. Emily had spent the morning preparing for an art show and hoped Alex would come with her for support. However, Alex had made other plans to catch up with friends, a detail conveniently left out until the last minute. "You're always so focused on your art," Alex said defensively when Emily expressed her disappointment. "I need my own space too." Emily felt a pang of hurt. "I thought you supported me. This show is important to me and I wanted you to be there." "I do support you," Alex snapped, "but it feels like your art is taking over everything. What about us?" The argument left Emily feeling more alone than ever. The dream of a harmonious new life was slipping away, replaced by the stark reality of their differences. The honeymoon phase had faded, and they were now confronted with the real work of maintaining a relationship. As days turned into weeks, the conflicts became more frequent. Emily's commitment to her children and her art often clashed with Alex's desire for spontaneity and undivided attention. Emily began to realize that while they had many shared interests, their core values and life goals were not as aligned as she had initially thought. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, Emily found herself questioning everything. She sat in her studio, surrounded by unfinished canvases, her mind racing. She had left her family to find herself, but now she felt more lost than ever. Emily's conversations with her children became a refuge. Lily and Max were adjusting, slowly but surely, and their resilience gave her strength. However, the guilt of disrupting their lives haunted her, especially now that her relationship with Alex was on shaky ground. "Mom, are you happy?" Max asked innocently during one of their video calls. Emily forced a smile. "I'm trying to be, sweetheart. It's just, life is complicated sometimes." The simplicity of Max's question lingered in her mind. Was she happy? Had she traded one form of unhappiness for another? The doubts gnawed at her, making her question the choices she had made. In a moment of clarity, Emily decided to confront Alex openly about their issues. They needed to have an honest conversation about their future, no matter how painful it might be. "Alex, we need to talk," she said one evening, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Alex looked up, apprehension written across their face. "What is it?" "We can't keep going like this," Emily began. "I feel like we're drifting apart, and I don't want us to end up resenting each other. We need to be honest about what we want and whether we can truly make this work." Alex sighed heavily, running a hand through their hair. "I've been feeling it too, Emily. I care about you, but sometimes it feels like we're on different paths." They talked late into the night, laying bare their fears, frustrations, and hopes. It was a painful but necessary conversation. They acknowledged their differences and the challenges of blending their lives. While there was still love between them, they realized that love alone might not be enough to bridge the gap. In the days that followed, Emily reflected on their conversation. She appreciated Alex's honesty and the clarity it brought, even if it was painful. The disillusionment had been a harsh wake-up call, forcing her to confront the reality of her new life. Emily knew that her journey was far from over. She had made significant strides in rediscovering herself, but there were still many questions left unanswered. The conflicts with Alex had highlighted the importance of aligning values and goals in a relationship, something she needed to consider moving forward. As she stood in her studio staring at a blank canvas, Emily felt a renewed sense of determination. Life was messy and complicated, but she was committed to navigating it with honesty and courage. She picked up her brush, ready to paint a new chapter, knowing that each stroke was a step toward understanding and healing. Chapter 8. The Reflection. Emily sat alone in her studio, the quiet hum of the city outside a stark contrast to the turmoil within her. The studio, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage of her own making. She stared at the canvas before her, its white surface mocking her with its emptiness. Each brushstroke seemed to carry the weight of her recent decisions, and the colors she once used to express joy and passion now felt muted and forced. As she dipped her brush into the paint, memories flooded back, the day she left her family, the initial excitement of starting anew with Alex, and the slow, painful unraveling of their relationship. Emily knew she needed to confront these feelings head-on to understand the impact of her choices. She began by reflecting on her decision to leave Michael and the children. It had been a choice born out of desperation, a need to reclaim her sense of self. But as the months passed, she questioned whether she had been fair to those she left behind. The guilt of disrupting her children's lives weighed heavily on her heart, and she wondered if she had truly considered their needs in her pursuit of happiness. Michael had been a good man, albeit distant and preoccupied with his own life. Their marriage had lacked the intimacy and connection she craved, but he had been a stable presence for their children. Emily's departure had shattered that stability, leaving Michael to pick up the pieces while she searched for herself. Her relationship with Alex had been a beacon of hope, a symbol of the new life she sought. But as the reality of their differences became apparent, Emily realized that she might have rushed into something without fully understanding what she needed. The initial passion and excitement had given way to conflicts and misunderstandings, and she found herself questioning the foundation of their relationship. Emily knew she needed to talk to Alex to have an honest conversation about their future. They had been avoiding the topic for weeks, each pretending that things would somehow resolve themselves. But the growing tensions were impossible to ignore, and she couldn't continue living in limbo. One evening, after a particularly strained day, Emily approached Alex in the living room. Alex was reading a book, their expression tense and withdrawn. Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation that needed to happen. "Alex, we need to talk," she said softly, sitting down beside them. Alex looked up, their eyes tired and wary. "About what?" "About us. About where we're headed and whether we can really make this work." Alex closed the book, setting it aside. "I've been thinking about that too," they admitted. "I care about you, Emily, but it feels like we're constantly at odds. I don't want us to keep hurting each other." Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't want that either. I love you, but it feels like we're forcing something that's not meant to be. We have different needs, different priorities, and it's becoming clearer that we're not as compatible as we thought." The room was filled with a heavy silence as they both absorbed the gravity of her words. Alex reached out, taking her hand in theirs. "Maybe we rushed into this. Maybe we were both looking for something to fill the voids in our lives, and we mistook that for something deeper." Emily's tears flowed freely now. "I think you're right. I needed to find myself, and in doing so, I lost sight of what truly mattered. I don't regret our time together, but I think we need to be honest about what's best for both of us." They talked late into the night, their words a mix of sorrow and understanding. They acknowledged the love they had shared, but also the reality that it wasn't enough to sustain a future together. It was a painful decision, but it was one they both knew was necessary. In the days that followed, Emily found herself reflecting deeply on her journey. She had sought freedom and self-discovery, but she had also learned about the complexities of relationships and the importance of aligning one's values and goals. Her time with Alex had been a significant chapter in her life, one that taught her about the importance of patience, communication, and understanding. Emily realized that her path to self-discovery was far from over. She had to reconcile her desire for independence with her responsibilities as a mother and the need for genuine connection. She knew she had made mistakes, but she also recognized the strength it took to face them and learn from them. As she stood before her canvas once more, Emily felt a sense of clarity. She began to paint, each stroke a reflection of her journey, its struggles, its lessons, and its moments of beauty. She was creating a new life, one that was honest and true to herself. And in that honesty, she found a renewed sense of hope for the future.
Chapter 9: The Return. Emily packed her bags with a heavy heart, knowing that her decision to leave Alex marked the end of another chapter in her life. She had spent countless nights pondering her next steps, and one truth had emerged with clarity: she needed to return to Willow Creek. Her children, Lily and Max, needed her, and she needed to reconnect with the parts of herself she had left behind. The drive back to Willow Creek was filled with a mix of anxiety and hope. The familiar landscape brought back a flood of memories, some joyous, some painful. As she neared the town, Emily's thoughts turned to her children. She wondered how they would react to her return and whether they could find a way to rebuild their fractured relationship. Her first stop was her old home, the place where she had shared so many moments with her family. As she pulled into the driveway, a wave of nostalgia washed over her. The house looked the same, but everything felt different. Emily took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. David opened the door, surprise evident on his face. "Emily," he said, his voice a mixture of shock and uncertainty. "Hi, David," Emily replied, her voice trembling. "Can we talk?" David nodded and stepped aside, allowing her to enter. The house felt both familiar and foreign, filled with the echoes of her past life. They sat in the living room, the tension palpable. "I've made a lot of mistakes," Emily began, her eyes fixed on her hands. "Leaving you and the kids, it was the hardest decision I've ever made. But I've realized that I need to be here, for them and for myself." David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Emily, you left us. It wasn't just hard on me, it was devastating for Lily and Max. They've been through so much." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I thought I needed to leave to find myself, but I lost sight of what was truly important. I want to make things right, if you'll let me." David's expression softened slightly. "It's not just about what I want, Emily. It's about the kids. They need stability, and they need to know that they can trust you again." "I understand," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to do whatever it takes to earn that trust back." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of footsteps. Lily and Max appeared in the doorway, their eyes wide with surprise and confusion. "Mom?" Lily's voice quivered as she spoke. Emily stood up, her heart aching at the sight of her children. "Hi, sweetheart. I've missed you both so much." Max clung to Lily, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "Are you staying, Mom?" Emily knelt down, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Max. I'm staying. I want to be here for you, for both of you. I know I have a lot to make up for, but I'm going to try my best." Lily hesitated for a moment before running to her mother, wrapping her arms around her tightly. Max followed suit, and Emily held them both, the weight of her mistakes and the hope for redemption mingling in her heart. Over the next few weeks, Emily worked tirelessly to rebuild her relationship with her children. She attended their school events, helped with homework, and spent quality time with them. It wasn't easy. There were moments of anger and hurt, but also moments of laughter and love. Slowly, she began to see the walls between them start to crumble. Reconnecting with David was a different challenge. They had shared a life together, and the wounds from her departure were still fresh. They started with small, tentative conversations about the children and gradually moved to deeper topics. Emily apologized for the pain she had caused and listened to David's feelings, acknowledging the hurt she had inflicted. One evening, after the children were asleep, David and Emily sat on the porch, the night air filled with the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves. "I never stopped loving you, Emily," David admitted, his voice tinged with sadness. "But it's going to take time for me to trust you again." "I understand," Emily replied softly. "I don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I just want to be here, to be a part of their lives, and to make amends." David nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "We can take it one day at a time. For the kids' sake, and maybe for ours too." As the days turned into weeks and then months, Emily continued to navigate the complexities of her return. She found solace in the familiar routines and the growing closeness with her children. She reconnected with old friends and became involved in the community, finding a sense of belonging she had longed for. Her relationship with David remained a work in progress. They were no longer the couple they once were, but they were learning to co-parent and communicate effectively. The wounds were healing, albeit slowly, and there was a glimmer of hope that, in time, they might find a new kind of partnership. Emily's journey of self-discovery had taken her far from Willow Creek, but it had ultimately led her back home. She had learned that finding oneself doesn't always mean starting over. It can also mean returning to where you began, with a new perspective and a deeper understanding of what truly matters. As she stood on the porch one evening, watching Lily and Max play in the yard, Emily felt a sense of peace. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but she also knew that she was where she needed to be. With her family by her side, she was ready to face whatever the future held. Chapter 10: The Resolution. Emily woke up to the gentle sounds of Willow Creek stirring to life. The early morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow on her bedroom walls. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm that had been absent for so long. Today marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where she aimed to find balance and peace. Her days in Willow Creek were now filled with purpose and intention. Emily had found a part-time job at the local community center, teaching art classes to children and adults. It was a perfect blend of her passion for art and her desire to give back to the community. Watching her students discover their creativity brought her immense joy and fulfillment. Balancing her job, her children, and her personal time required careful planning and mindfulness. Emily established a routine that allowed her to be present for Lily and Max while also nurturing her own needs. She set aside time each day for painting, meditation, and reading activities that helped her stay grounded and connected to herself. Rebuilding her relationship with her children was a continuous journey. Emily made it a point to listen to them, to understand their fears and hopes. She encouraged open conversations and created a safe space for them to express their feelings. Gradually, the trust she had lost began to return, and the bond between them grew stronger. One sunny Saturday, Emily and her children decided to have a picnic in the park. They packed a basket with sandwiches, fruit, and cookies, and set off to their favorite spot by the lake. As they spread out the blanket and settled down, Emily watched Lily and Max run around, their laughter filling the air. It was in these simple moments that she found the greatest joy. "Mom, come play with us," Max called out, waving a frisbee in the air. Emily smiled and joined them, her heart light and full. They spent the afternoon playing games, sharing stories, and enjoying each other's company. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt a profound sense of contentment. Her relationship with David also evolved. They had settled into a comfortable rhythm of co-parenting, communicating openly about the children's needs and supporting each other in their roles as parents. While the romantic aspect of their relationship had ended, they discovered a new kind of friendship based on mutual respect and shared goals. One evening, as they watched Lily's soccer game together, David turned to Emily. "You've changed a lot since you came back," he said, his tone warm and reflective. Emily nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I had to. I needed to find myself again, to understand what really matters. And coming back here, being with the kids, and finding my place in the community, it's given me a sense of peace I didn't know I needed." David smiled. "I'm glad you're here, Emily. The kids are happier, and it's good to see you finding your way." Emily's journey also involved reconnecting with old friends and making new ones. She joined a local book club, started attending community events, and even took up yoga at a nearby studio. These activities not only enriched her life, but also helped her build a support system that was crucial for her well-being. One of her closest friends, Sarah, became a pillar of support. They often met for coffee, discussing their lives, dreams, and challenges. Sarah had been there through the highs and lows, offering a listening ear and sage advice. "You've come a long way, Emily," Sarah remarked one day as they sat in their favorite cafe. "I can see how much stronger and more confident you are." Emily smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "It's been a tough journey, but I've learned so much about myself. I finally feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be." Her art also flourished during this time. Emily's paintings, once a personal outlet, began to attract attention from the local art community. She held a solo exhibition at a gallery in town, showcasing her work that reflected her journey of self-discovery and healing. The positive reception was overwhelming, and it reaffirmed her belief in the power of art to transform and inspire. One evening, after a successful day at the community center, Emily returned home to find Lily and Max working on their homework at the kitchen table. She sat down with them, helping with math problems and discussing their day. These everyday moments, filled with love and connection, were the essence of the life she had fought to rebuild. As the night settled in and the house grew quiet, Emily took a moment to reflect. She had come a long way from the woman who had felt lost and suffocated. Her journey had been marked by difficult decisions, painful realizations, and profound growth. But through it all, she had found her way back to herself and to the people who mattered most. Emily knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she felt equipped to handle them with grace and resilience. She had built a new life in Willow Creek, one that honored her true self and embraced the love and responsibilities she held dear. With a heart full of gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose, Emily looked forward to the future. She was at peace, and for the first time in a long while, she felt whole.